Alright everybody, welcome back to We Play Games. I'm Walker and here we are in Age of Wonders 4 about to do our first of our Blitzing Baddies series, where we're going to be playing with bad guys and just like 1v1s against the very hard AI, just trying to bang out Pantheon points. Now, I have banged out a lot of Pantheon already, but these factions are going to be specifically designed without any Pantheon stuff in hand, so that way if you're picking up Age of Wonders 4 for the first time and want to just play a faction, then you can build the faction and you can play it out, and I'm going to teach you how to play the faction in question. Now, if you don't have any interest in PvP, obviously you can change the settings here to whatever you feel most comfortable with, but be aware that every modification you make on your realm is going to in turn influence what sort of factions are stronger or weaker. There are some things that I think generally are imbalanced if you include them in customized realm, things that encourage more Ancient Wonders, for instance, just give you access to way more resources in the game. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. It kind of depends on what sort of game experience you want to get out of it, but obviously if you are better at using the resources than the AI is, you're going to get an advantage for including that in your custom realm, so just be careful. That said, PvP standard is on just like a normal land map just to encourage player interaction, and I like that encouraged player interaction, so we're going to be playing with just land. We're also going to be switching this over to difficulty brutal to help simulate the difficulty of playing against like a human enemy, but we'll be modifying it in advanced settings, again to just line it up with PvP standards. So we're going to switch this over to rulers or generated, just so that way we don't know what sort of wizard we're going to be fighting against. But we're also going to turn off the other victory conditions, so that way the players have to fight each other. We'll switch Hero Resurgence to never. Hero Resurgence is something that can bring your hero back from the dead after a combat. It's one of these things that makes the game just marginally more difficult and some early combats higher risk. We're also going to be playing on low world threat and normal starting conditions. I'll talk about how to design a map in a future video. Basically, both of these things are symmetrical effects that affect both your starting resources as well as the difficulty of the world that the AI is going to be playing in. And so this doesn't really make the game more difficult to be playing on the brutal standard of hard and high, but hard and high makes certain strategies a little better. Generally speaking, on world threat high, there's just way more experience points running around, and so it's much easier to evolve some of your low level units. In starting condition hard just means you have to spend a little bit of time saving up some money before you can build your first extra hero. It doesn't really make the game that much more difficult to be playing on the brutal standard versus PvP standard. You can try it out for yourself, but I promise that the reason that this is PvP standard is that it plays very well. But we are going to be doing auto combat only against the AI. Auto combat only is standard on PvP, but also I would encourage you to not play against the AI very much in terms of manual battles, because the AI is very, very weak at the moment. Hopefully it gets stronger in the future, but it's like playing against Rome Total War AI. But that's going to be our setup for our world. So next, let's talk about our faction. So you can create a new faction here in Age of Wonders 4, customize something for yourself, but we've built a faction, Faldorn of the Shadow Druids, that we're going to talk through right here. So let's click edit on Faldorn. You get access to a physical form. The physical form is purely aesthetic, just pick whatever you think is fun, but we've picked Elfkin because, you know, they're Shadow Druids, whatever. But we've got here a mind trait and a body trait. The body traits and mind traits only apply to units of that racial type. And so if you summon a bunch of units, then you don't get the racial type bonuses on those units. And most of what we're going to be doing here with this faction is utilizing Tome of Beasts to summon a lot of animals very quickly, get them up to high level, get them evolved. And so our Elfkin and their mind and body traits are both like a little less important than they would be otherwise. So we've taken quick reflexes, so that way we have a bonus to being harder to hit with ranged attacks. But I think generally you could pick basically any sort of durable ability here. I think that largely speaking in PvP, things like resilient and resistant are quite strong. Fast recuperation is also very powerful, of course, because it speeds up your ability to clear the map. Hardy is just extra hit points. And the mounts are also notorious for being sometimes very useful, like the spider mounts are pretty broken. And then nightmare mounts, of course, interacts pretty favorably with morale bombing. It really just depends on what sort of build you're going for. In this case, we're going to take quick reflexes so that way we can keep our shock units alive, because we're going to have a lot of shock units that do not have access to shields. And so they're going to be naturally a little weaker against enemy archer fire. And 30% harder to hit with ranged attacks is a pretty meaningful upgrade. We're also taking Ferocious because we're playing Dark. So Ferocious gets you a 40% damage bonus on retaliation and opportunity attacks. But retaliation and opportunity attacks both scale off of if you were to hit with your weapon only once, and therefore are stronger with units that have one high damage hit and weaker with units that have multiple hits. So that means that polearms and shield units are generally weaker with retaliation and opportunity, whereas shock units are generally stronger. Dark, which is one of the things we're playing as, it's our culture, gets us access to lots of single high hit damage attacks, and therefore plays pretty well with Ferocious. Overwhelm Tactics is a very powerful across the board ability, as is Tenacious and Adaptable. Defensive Tactics can be good, but generally speaking, clumping your units in PvP is just asking for the enemy to use an AoE attack on you. So here we have our culture. Our culture, we're taking Dark, not primarily because we want like the special abilities of Dark, but simply because we want access to affinity. So in Age of Wonders 4, we're going to see in a moment, there's something called an Imperium tree, where depending on what sort of magical affinities your faction has access to, you will gain access to different ways to spend Imperium to get bonuses. Shadow Affinity here is going to give us a really, really powerful tool on the Imperium tree where we get 50 knowledge per level of hero that we kill. And because we're evil, we're going to be attacking free cities a lot and killing their heroes. And that way we'll get a ton of free knowledge in the beginning of the game that'll speed up our technology. By speeding up our technology, we'll get access to better units, and then hopefully we can just take the enemy out very early with a tech advantage. But whenever you build your faction, just try to design it around one or two things as a core, and then add things in that support that core. Because sometimes you build a race and you look at your culture first, and then you try to build off of that. Sometimes you choose your tome first, try to build off that. Sometimes you build your society first, build off of that. In this case, with the Shadow Druids, we've taken Gifted Casters and Mana Channelers. Both of them give us access to Astral Affinity, which is very, very powerful if you're going to be doing a lot of summoning. And in this case, Gifted Casters and Mana Channelers also buff summoning. Mana Channelers saves us mana on summoning spells, as well as giving our magic origin units +1 rank, which means that our animals start that much closer to evolving into a stronger animal, which is kind of what we want to be doing. Once they've evolved, they are real powerhouses. Gifted Casters is just here because we are going to be playing as a champion. Generally speaking, in Age of Wonders 4 right now, I think it's stronger to be playing as a Wizard King. You get access to way more world map casting and combat casting points in a very short period of time. And what that means, of course, is if you're playing as a Wizard King, you kind of don't need to take Gifted Casters because you're just going to get these resources naturally as you play the game out. But if you're playing as a champion and you take these early, then that gives you an advantage over a Wizard King who doesn't take this early. So that means you have a small window where you're going to be faster than they are. And importantly, every society trait that you pick not only gives you access to more affinity, but also gives you a starting bonus. Mana Channelers gets us an extra unit. Gifted Casters gets us an extra spell. This means that we get through to our second tome one spell faster. It's just a nice little combo. Now, when you're building a faction in Age of Wonders 4, my recommendation is to build a faction that ticks a lot of different boxes and allows you to meet different challenge thresholds. You want to be able to just start the map and immediately start fighting things, and that means that even on the higher difficulty levels, you do need to make sure that you're starting with some extra units, or if you're not going to be starting with extra units, then an insanely strong economy start. I find that generally speaking, the strongest economy society traits are the things that interact with Imperium. Imperium is a special resource in Age of Wonders 4, but also some of these are just very powerful society traits generally. Scions of Evil gets you tons of extra Imperium. All you have to do is burn cities to the ground. That's not a big deal. Devotees of Good, of course, gets extra Imperium for being good. Adept Settlers indirectly gets you more Imperium by saving you Imperium on founding cities. Wonder Architects gets you Imperium because Ancient Wonders, once they've been annexed to your city, get you Imperium. But there's also, like, out there the ability to just overbuild your Wizard Tower. In Age of Wonders 4, at your capital, you can build this very expensive building called a Wizard Tower, but every level that you add to it gets you +5 Imperium. So if you don't start with an ability to generate Imperium in your society traits, it's not the end of the world. It just means you need to build a Wizard Tower bigger, earlier. So here in Age of Wonders 4, you start with one Tier 1 Tome. This is going to define the magic that you have access to, in addition to the magic that your culture provides. In this case, we're going to be playing with the Tome of Beasts. The Tome of Beasts is a very powerful tome in the beginning of the game, kind of no matter what your map looks like, because of Summon Wild Animal. Summon Wild Animal is a lot like the other summons. It's going to generate some sort of animal for you, but unlike the other ones where you get something consistent, here you're going to get a random animal. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but sometimes when it's good, it's outrageously good. So this is kind of like a gambling tome, but it's a gambling tome where the gamble when you hit it really does pay off, because you can summon a tier 2 animal out of this spell and then evolve it into a tier 4 animal very, very early, which can give you some pretty enormous advantages when it comes to combat. Tome of Beasts also gives you access to Wild Speaker, which is a very powerful support unit, Mark Prey, which is very inexpensive. It interacts favorably with the flanking ability, but because Animal Kinship, Pack Leader, as well as all of the other nature tomes just feed very well into having a bunch of animals, and of course we're playing the Shadow Druids, we're going to be playing with Tome of Beasts. We're going to be summoning some animals and letting them loose on the world. We'll be letting them loose as a champion. Generally speaking, again, I think Wizard Kings are stronger, but champions specifically get an experience point bonus on non-hero units, which means that the animals that we're going to summon are going to get stronger faster, and therefore they'll gain access to their higher evolutions much earlier in the game than you would otherwise. We're going to be playing with a Frost Orb. You can play with kind of whatever you want to in terms of your initial loadout, but I do think that unless you know exactly what you're doing, start with a hero mount. It makes your heroes much more mobile, which gives them much more flexibility in terms of moving around the map, healing, clearing stuff, deploying from combat to combat, getting more experience points that way. Once you know what you're doing, then start to branch out into the staves. Some of them are very powerful, but I'm not going to play with any of the things here that have Pantheon requirement, just so that way you can create this faction at home. Alright, so there's Faldorn and the Shadow Druids, and let's jump in on our first episode of Blitzing Baddies. Alright, so here in Age of Wonders 4, depending on what sort of map settings you start on, you're going to start with some amount of gold, some amount of mana. This is our world map casting limit, which is the resource we need in order to summon animals. Here we have our knowledge, here's our Imperium, but the Empire development is locked for the first 2 turns, so you can't just immediately start going to town on it. We have our diplomatic overview, quests, heroes, magic materials, city overview, and armies, and rally of the lieges. But here we're playing with normal starting resources, and that means that we can hire a hero from the first turn. Now, you can avoid hiring a hero in the first turn if you want to just work on your economy first, but I think that generally speaking, it's very, very strong to get another hero running early, just so it accumulates experience points. Because heroes are very strong in Age of Wonders 4. Perhaps they're overtuned at the moment. That's an argument you have to resolve for yourself, but they are very powerful, and being able to leverage them early is a huge advantage. So even if you're playing on Brutal and you don't start with the money necessary to hire a hero immediately, you should consider it very, very strongly to just wait a turn or 2 and then hire a hero, because it really is a big deal. So in this case, we're going to hire Moloch the Attuned. He's got a special ability, Shadow Adept, that gets our Empire +3 Shadow Affinity in the event that this character is a governor. So that means that if we hire this character, we're going to want to get another city down and get this guy in as governor ASAP. But we're going to want to do that anyway, because you can see here that we've reached our hero cap. In Age of Wonders 4, if you have 1 city, you have 1 hero cap. 2 cities, 2 hero caps, so on and so forth. That said, you can still recruit heroes past your hero cap. It just costs extra gold and an extra upkeep of 30. So it's expensive, but it does pay very quick dividends, because now we have another hero that's going to let us clear a lot of fights and hopefully get to level 5, which is a critical break point on our heroes. So the first thing I encourage you to do is to get good at identifying things underneath the fog. This might change in future patches, we'll see, but as it stands, you can mouse around and look under the fog and say, oh, there's a watchtower. That means, of course, that because this is a 4X game, you're kind of doing some exploration already. Here, for instance, I know that this is a bronze Ancient Wonder, which is something that we might actually be able to clear pretty quickly. Ancient Wonders get you more Imperium, great for your economy. Getting them early, even better. Oh, and there's another one over here, so I know that this northeast corner looks quite profitable for our army to move into. And it doesn't look like there's anything else particularly interesting on the map. So I think that our army is going to move up this way and try to hit these locations, because these are 2 bronze Ancient Wonders that we can clear and get tons of extra mana from, and mana is going to be a constraining resource for us because we are going to be summoning. Let's use our scout here You can see that we have an outrider, and this symbol over the outrider indicates it's a scout. We'll move to this small creature cage. Ooh, and we get a Lesser Snow Spirit. That's a really good one. Lesser Snow Spirit is an elemental, but it does evolve. So if you right click on your unit, you go over here and you mouse over the rank, it'll tell you if it gets to a champion level, it'll evolve into a Snow Spirit, which is a tier 3 unit instead of a tier 1. It's a really meaningful upgrade in terms of the combat efficiency of your army. It is something that's a little random because sometimes your units can just die, but evolution units are generally very strong just because they scale so well into the mid to late game. Next, let's check our research. So here we see, there's a Wild Speaker, Call of the Wild, and Wayfinder enchantment. But the thing that we're really looking forward to, the thing that we want to get going as quickly as possible, is actually Summon Wild Animal. So in this case, we can shuffle our research. It's expensive if you're playing with lower starting resources, then generally you don't want to be shuffling here. But because we started with extra mana, oh no, we shuffled and we missed. So unfortunately that can happen. In this case, because we discovered mana down below, I'm happy to shuffle again, and we found Summon Wild Animal. So we are down minus 40 mana at this point, and that would normally be like a disaster in terms of your starting economy. But fortunately for us, there's a Razorback down here guarding a mana node. Mana nodes generate a flat 10 mana for you if you an outpost there. You can also build conduits on location and get more resources that way. But if we just put down a conduit in this location, then we can start collecting extra mana right away. So we're going to click on our new hero and we're going to mouse down to these Razorbacks. We're going to see where their engagement range is. So you can see there that they engage all the way down here, which is great because we want to be here with our units. But if we move our hero down here and we move our Snow Spirit in, we can see what else is there. So there's an Entwined Thrall and a Razorback guarding this mana. That means we'll probably lose if we just engage with these 2 units, but we can bring more troops in. So we're going to bring our hero in just so that way the hero gets more experience points, but we're actually going to keep it here. This means that the experience points is going to be divided into the fewest number of units possible. It might mean we lose our Lesser Snow Spirit right here, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. As it turns out, we were fine, we won the battle, and now, because we cleared a mana load, we got 76 extra mana. Now, unfortunately, our heroes can't actually make it into range to engage these Storm Spirits, but they're guarding an iron deposit, and so if we cleared it, we would get production. Whenever you clear one of these buildings here in Age of Wonders 4, you get whatever production would normally come from it, usually like 4 to 6 turns worth of production up front. And in this case, production would let us build stuff, but because we need to spend our gold to build this outpost and therefore start collecting mana, we're not going to have the resources necessary to clear this anyway. So we're just going to pull our Snow Spirit back. We'll probably allow some of these heroes to heal, and then we'll start sending out some scouts. But we're also going to go into our city here. This is our throne city. You can see here that it has our crown. In the event that we die, we'll respawn on the city in a couple of turns, depending on what sort of infrastructure we have in place. But each city is going to have a certain number of pops. As your pops increase, you can annex more and more sectors. Sectors will provide you with lots of resources and be very good. We're getting food, which grows more pops, production, which builds buildings, draft, which build units, gold, which helps sustain our empire, mana, knowledge, and Imperium. Knowledge is the thing that determines how quickly you're able to research things, so it is quite powerful. And Imperium is the thing that's going to determine your empire development, how quickly you can press out new cities or advance into new empire development skills. So Imperium's very, very strong. But here we have one Whispering Stone. Think of this as basically a Palantir. That's pretty obviously what it is, but we don't have anyone to like foist it upon at the moment. So rather than saving it and then eventually giving it to a free city to corrupt the minds of the people working and living there, we're going to start corrupting the minds of the people living inside of Nightgart. By giving this city a Whispering Stone, it's going to be very slowly increasing the stability. And if your stability can get high enough, you get nice little bonuses on your production draft food income. Generally speaking, it's stronger to use Whispering Stones on free cities, but it depends on what you're doing. But that's our first turn. So we're just going to pull back some of our wounded units to heal here. If you're inside friendly territory, you heal 25 hit points per turn. There are different ways to modify this up, but given that our hero is a very important part of our development as a military, we want to have them healthy enough to fight. We're also going to start sending some of our lesser important units just off into the fog. If you have a hero who's level 2 by now and you've picked up experienced leader, then it makes sense to keep some of your units close so that way you can get lots of experience points on them. But none of these units are really important to our development at the moment. We've encountered a big free city, a size 4. Now, we could turn our army around and just plan on fighting the size 4 city, but given that I think this territory up here in the northeast does look more valuable, what we're going to do is withdraw this Whispering Stone and just give it to the city of Rallick. Rallick now is going to just gradually grow closer and closer to us, and as it gets closer and closer to us, we'll be able to trade with them and then hopefully turn them into a vassal. We're going to take this guy and just do a little bit of scouting. Ooh, a size 1. Now, a size 1 city doesn't offer a whole lot of loot, but it does offer us the opportunity to do pillaging if they grow. Because if they grow, they'll get extra pops, they'll work a new space, that new building we can declare war on, move a troop on, pillage it, and then get 75 gold. That's like an entire turn's worth of gold at the beginning of the game, so it's a really big deal. So now we have our first economic decision. I think the right thing to do here, given that we did pick up a little bit of food, is to attract population. That in turn will allow us to pick a sector around us. And I like here taking farms just so that way we get a little bit of extra production on the buildings that we're looking to push out, while also giving us access to more resources, either more food or more gold, more production. I like taking farm here on the pastures just so we maximize our food initially, so that way we can push out more pops even faster, hopefully without having to commit too much Imperium, because we did not start with an Imperium bonus with this faction, so you can't spend as much on chasing pops as you would normally. But we're going to put a workshop in as our first building. The workshop will get us draft and production. I think you could take experimentation chambers as well for the extra knowledge bonus and the gold, but I think we're going to be able to pull in enough gold, hopefully by picking up this mine and pillaging some people, that we're going to have more of a deficit on the production side than on the gold side. That's just sort of an intuition call based off of what sort of resources are available to you. But by building this farm, we've been able to advance our army just a little bit closer, because now they're still inside friendly territory, they're still healing. So we're going to pull the Astral Wisp back down to be in range, so that way it can participate in this battle, get a little bit of experience points, maybe eventually evolve. But we have enough mana that I'm okay allowing the AI to cast spells if it feels like it can. It rarely does, but sometimes you're surprised. All right, so we were able to clear that battle, and we did indeed hit level 2. So I think we're gonna make our champion here take experienced leader, so that way units that are walking around with our leader will evolve faster. But I think we're gonna start leveling up our other hero with access to evocation spells, because the battle spells that you get access to can really help your early game clear. At the end of the game, lightning evocation kind of doesn't do a lot, but here in the beginning, it's gonna very rapidly gain us access to Fire Evoker or Sundering Curse, which are both bananas strong abilities. But it's also just a nice little ability in terms of a damage bonus. Anytime there's an underground passage, I like to pop down there and see if there's a city under the earth, because sometimes there is. We'll pick up a little gold there and encounter a city. It's a size 1 city. That's a little disappointing. Not a great source of resources, but it means that if we sweep this way first and then come down, we should have a pretty easy time killing the hero that's guarding the city, and therefore get more knowledge. Because part of the Shadow Tree, which we now have access to, gets you 50 knowledge per level of heroes defeated in combat. This is a very, very quick way to advance your research. And because we started with 2 pips in Astral, Shadow, and Nature, we're making much faster progress, because it is based off of how much accumulated affinity you have in that type of magic. So we're getting there literally twice as fast. We do now have the gold necessary to build another scout, and I like having a second scout just to do fog busting, but also to find the enemy, because we haven't encountered them yet. It's turn 3, that's not a bad thing, it just means that they're a little further away than they can be. Awesome, we got another lesser snow spirit, although now we are 1 turn out of movement range to be able to participate in this conduit fight. So instead, we're going to build an outpost here, and then we're going to take our wizard, who we gave the lightning evocation to, and we're just going to scout ahead. That gives our army time to regroup. Now all our units are gaining experience points. It's important to note the Astral Wisp, this unit that we started with due to mana channelers, is another unit that evolves, and it evolves into a good one. Astral Siphoner down here at Champion allows you to pull enemy units towards you, which can give you very, very quick and easy hero kills if your opponent doesn't know what they're doing. That happened to me in a PvP game against Zombie. We've discovered our opponent, Ham Binger. Well, that's a reliable enemy who shows up all over the place. Whenever you're playing Age of Wonders 4, you need tons and tons of money up front. The easiest way to get there is to be evil, but that's not the only way to get there. Here we found a production stash, and by discovering that production stash, we can now build experimentation chambers and keep our knowledge growing. That's going to maximize the amount of experience points going to them, and that critically will get us to level 5 as quickly as we can. Level 5 is a huge breakpoint when it comes to your strength. We could potentially engage with just the heroes, but if we brought this Lesser Snow Spirit with us, the Lesser Snow Spirit would also gain experience points, and hopefully get a little closer to evolving, because if we can get it up to champion, then we get a tier 3. Tier 3 should start raffle stomping the board. Well, we got our heroes up to tier 3 at least. We'll take Sundering Curse. Sundering Curse is a unique ability due to being dark, but it's a very powerful spell. It does tons of damage. That's a huge bonus in terms of reducing their defense and resistance. And Weakened is also the thing that generates regeneration for your units playing as dark, and so that's a very powerful spell. On that note, we have now researched Summon Wild Animal. We're going to start casting it. Summon Wild Animal is going to use these world map casting points, which again, these scale up when you're a Wizard King, but do not whenever you're a champion. So as soon as you can start summoning as a champion, you should. Otherwise, you're just going to fall way behind. But there are a couple of really interesting things on the map in addition to the Ancient Wonders. Any of these magical resources are very high priority to pick up, because the magic materials not only give you a nice little unique global effect, but if you get 3 that are part of a collection effect, then you get a very powerful bonus, faster damage out of your heroes, which can be very powerful in the mid to late game, tons of extra mana and knowledge, which is outrageous, or just a flat 10 Imperium income, which, you know, for us that would be a 25% boost. That would be huge. So you want to keep an eye out for the magic materials, but I do think that if you have Bronze Ancient Wonders near you, those are higher priority. They're just more consistent in terms of getting you good value. So we're going to take a farm again in Nightgart. The reason that we're pushing out farms here is simultaneously for the extra food, but also so that way we can build these more advanced buildings earlier. So if you want to build something in Age of Wonders 4, generally speaking, you want to make sure that you're getting your boosts whenever you can. And your boosts are generally going to be defined by what sort of sectors your cities have annexed. In this case, because our gold is still kind of flowing in, I'm happy to just build a stonemason. This is going to get us plus 15 production income, which, you know, we're at 31 production right now. That's a 50% increase in our total production at the moment. It won't be once we add this quarry in, but that's okay. It's a nice little investment in our city's future, and given that we're going to be pulling in even more gold in, you know, just a couple of turns here, I'm happy setting ourselves up for that. So our outpost has cleared, and at the same time, it's actually discovered something under the fog that we almost missed. Here is something called Archon Blood. Archon Blood is one of these magical resources we just discussed, but it's critically something that gets us plus 20 mana per turn when it's annexed. Plus 20 mana per turn really fixes up our economy in a big way. So we might want to just audible and just pick this up right now. We can get there in one turn with our main stack, which means that we can get within range to fight it with Moloch the Attuned by staying inside the borders of our outpost. If we're inside the borders of our outpost at the end of the fight, we can heal and then just keep going in regards to this Bronze Wonder. Now, we're also discovering here the corner of a free city. So depending on the nature of this free city, how big it is, if it's hostile, if it looks plunderable, we might conquer that to attach the Bronze Wonder to. But we're going to play that one by ear. So we summoned our first beast and we got a Hunter Spider. Hunter Spider is a very powerful unit because it's a tier 2, but this is a tier 2 that critically evolves into a tier 4 Hunter Spider Matriarch. This is a really powerful unit. Tier 4 units in the early game are just outrageous powerhouses. And so by getting it early, hopefully this Hunter Spider will stay alive and evolve. The Astral Wisp is mostly a scout at this point. The damage from Cosmic Bolts is laughably small, but it does do magical damage, and we are fighting against a Blessed Soul here, and that means that it's going to take very little damage from physical damage. You can see here at the top it says Blessed Soul, 7 defense, 3 resistance. This means it takes very little in terms of physical damage, but is a little easier to beat up with magic. All right, we got the battle and nobody died. That's what we were looking for. We didn't spend any movement points moving onto the Archon Blood because we attacked it with just the Hunter Spider. We'll go ahead and summon another wild animal. But now, in order to use the Archon Blood, we need a work camp, or to make this into a city. At the moment, I don't want to waste the Imperium on making that into a city, because our Imperium is about to get spent in a big way. We're going to pick up this first Astral ability, so that way we can summon monsters a little faster. And we're also going to take plus 50 knowledge, because we're going to be killing another AI in short order here. And then once we're ready to build a city, we're going to take Fruitful Integration, so that way the cities will get more pops, and also found 2 turns faster. That's a really big deal. But now we're up to level 4. I'm going to take Pack Leader on our Ruler, so that way our animals are just that much stronger. And our Mage, I'm going to take Distant Evocation, just so that way we can have even more potential ability to use things like Sundering Curse, because this is a 3-action move, so that means that the Mage in question can't actually move and also use Sundering Curse. So getting 1 extra range there is actually a really big deal. And now we're going to go ahead and declare war on Avernus and begin our Blitzing Baddies campaign in earnest, move into the Conduit, and start pillaging. And we've explored this city and it appears to be hostile, so we are actually at war with this free city of Saint Spire already. But that's okay by me, because that gives us an opportunity to take out this city, refound it as a Shadow Druid city, and then immediately leverage it to take control of this Bronze Ancient Wonder. We're going to pick up Wild Speaker here. Wild Speaker is a very, very powerful support unit that can actually summon more units for you while in combat. So whether you're playing auto combat only against the AI or PvP, Wild Speakers are quite strong. We're also exploring with one of our scouts north, and I think we may have found Hembinger's capital. So our path for the remainder of the game, depending on how hostile Hembinger is, might just be to bang out these 2 Bronze Wonders and then just attack his capital. If we have time to go down here and deal with Avernus, we will, but if we just pillage them for the remainder of the game, I'm okay with that too. So here we see some of the defenders of Saint Spire. We don't necessarily have to engage with them, but they are an opportunity for us to get a little more experience points. But because we have 4 units that we really do want to be evolving, we're going to bring them in to fight these defenders with us. And importantly, that was a defended location, so we got 98 gold out of it. But now we can see the Mage Glass Forest. So the Mage Glass Forest, if we are able to defeat this and annex it, will get us 20 extra mana per turn. But also if we attach it to a city, we'll get a little bit of Imperium as well as a mana bonus for each conduit in the city. So we're going to take a quarry here for the first time, just so that way, A, we can bang out that stonemason, but that B, we can build a boosted shrine. Your shrine and your mana income buildings are going to require you to have quarries in your cities, and we're currently running on a small but manageable negative balance on mana. But given that we want to just like keep summoning things and keep growing our army as quickly as we can, we do need to keep mana in mind. Mage Glass Forest will help, but so will quarries and mana infrastructure. Yep, there's Hambinger's capital. It's size 4 at the moment, so it doesn't look like he's invested tons and tons of Imperium upgrading it. We have enough gold that I'm happy to produce a couple of tier 1 units if we need to just pad our army out. But generally speaking, tier 1 units, even if you're pushing Tome of the Horde, are not that powerful when auto-resolving. They just die a lot. If you're manual battling, then you can get a lot of extra value out of really buffed tier 1 units. But if you're manual battling, you can get value out of basically anything against the AI at the moment. Oh baby. Alright, it's turn 9 and one of our snow spirits has indeed evolved. Now we have a tier 3 unit. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take our main stack, minus the wounded snow spirit, move to the Mage Glass Forest, bring our mage in, and then explore. If we had enough mana, we could potentially spend it to get a nice little bonus against the Mirror Veil. But I think we, with our 2 level 4 heroes, should be able to make quick work of these guys. Oh no, we lost one of our evolution line units. That's okay. That does sometimes happen whenever you're trying to press out your advantage in the early game. And by sacrificing that tier 3 unit, we're going to get 189 mana, but it also gives us access to tons of either gold, stability, or knowledge, or Imperium if we just run raw Imperium here. I don't hate actually just taking knowledge so that way you can finish the Wild Speaker. Generally speaking, Wild Speaker is just way stronger than adding an extra Dark Warrior to the board. So even though we did waste 1 turn in terms of production here, I'm going to go ahead and add a Wild Speaker, shift it to the front. We may or may not end up canceling this Dark Warrior down the road, Just kind of depends, but getting a wild speaker now seems like it'll be very, very strong. We'll also take underground laboratory, but we're going to want to set ourselves up to put down a blacksmith ASAP, because plus 20 draft income means that we can speed up our production on wild speakers by quite a lot. But you'll see that both of our heroes now are level 5, so that's going to mean two things. A, our mage is going to pick up an experienced leader perk, just so that way we can start working on more evolutionary units. But B, we get access to a signature skill. Signature skills are outrageously powerful and kind of meta-defining. At the moment, the summons are pretty firmly my belief to be the strongest things that you can get access to. Ideally, you get access to the things that summon a tier 3 unit. Those are really, really powerful, but summoning undead is not a bad thing. But yeah, like here we can take Summon Elemental, for instance, and we can take defensive training on our main ruler, so that way our evolutionary units can stick around a little longer. Our summon animal ended up being an ice spider this time, which is another really strong summoned animal. Evolves into the ice spider matriarch. That's a really disgusting unit. So we've reached Pact of Cooperation with the city of Ralek. That means now we can trade with them. In this case, if we give them just a tiny bit of gold, we'll get extra experience points. Probably should have done that before we fought, but hey, I'm happy to get the little bit of extra experience here moving forward. And although we are very close to being able to push into a new tome, which would make me want to take the Enchanted Crow Companion, we're probably not going to cast the spell. It takes some investment in terms of world casting, whereas Brand of Wrath can be very powerful. Now in multiplayer, my recommendation would be to take a scout and park it on top of the Howling Castle here, so that way the other player couldn't easily clear out this Bronze Wonder and get the value from it. So just so that way we're giving good practice advice, I'm gonna take our scout here and just land it on the Howling Castle and leave it there. But our outpost has finished its work camp. That means we can go down and plop a conduit right here, get a whole buttload of extra mana, or we could even just do a research outpost. We'll still get 20 extra mana from the Archon blood itself, but 5 extra research might take this from a 6-turn research down to a 5. Unfortunately it didn't, but we'll find more research as we build, especially this underground laboratory. But given that we've built a work camp here, I think it's very important to go ahead and build palisade walls. Generally speaking, you should not try to get away with not building palisade walls on your outposts, especially your cities. In multiplayer, that's asking for trouble. Okay, so let's go ahead and start a siege on Saint Spire here. We're going to throw Harass Defenders on here just so that way we have an easier fight against these units. That means that we can potentially deploy fewer units when the walls finally fall and concentrate the experience points in a way that hopefully evolves units again. But in the meantime, we'll have a pretty obvious couple of battles here where we can just pick up some experience points for everyone. Given that we're going to be conquering a city in just a couple of turns, we're going to take Fruitful Integration. And here's where the lack of Imperium generation is going to start hurting. We would very much like to take Astral Inspiration as well as All-Seeing like right now, but if we do that, then in 2 turns when the city falls, we won't have the 200 Imperium necessary to actually annex the city. I think generally, as long as you're okay with the RNG nature of Astral Inspiration, this gets you more net knowledge, but of course we're several turns off from Brand of Wrath. This will get us even faster. Now in this case, we are very, very close to being able to build the Town Hall 2 Dread Spire that'll let us start recruiting Warlocks and Night Guards. And we do have this gold invested in the Dark Warrior that now that we have Wild Speakers, we're probably not going to build any Dark Warriors for the immediate future. And that gets us some money back and allows us to start building a Town Hall 2. And the Town Hall 2 is going to dramatically increase the value of this city. That's going to give us access to special province improvements. So it's definitely worth picking up instead of hanging on to the dream of the Dark Warrior there. But given that we're not going to be sacking Saint Spire, I think we are going to take the city and immediately slap the Mageglass Forest onto it. I think we're going to go ahead and build a Forester here. Forester gives us some boosts on some nice buildings after we're done with the Town Hall 2, including, for instance, the library or the storehouse, either of which are nice little bits of infrastructure to get going early. We're going to declare war on Loxol. It's potentially risky depending on if we have time to actually sack the city, but the city here doesn't have walls, so we're going to start pillaging it. If we can burn it all the way to the ground and then refound it later, that's fine by me. Taking the city is going to be pretty quick once our army is done here in Saint Spire and in the forests. And paying attention to whether or not a free city has access to walls is an important part of the process. Now, because both of our heroes have experienced leaders and do have stacks that are completed, I'm going to go ahead and click Animal Kinship. This will give our heroes, as well as any other characters of our race, a nice little bonus to their combat efficiency if they're near animals. And boy, we're going to have a lot of animals. Oh boy, we've discovered an even bigger giant city under the earth. Relic is a size 5, but we're 9 turns off from Pact of Loyalty, so I think we'll probably keep our Whispering Stone here. But Halcyon is a size 7, so if we can get another Whispering Stone pretty early, in this case we're 8 turns off from Diplomatic Focus, and unfortunately do not have Order Affinity, so that's kind of our best bet. But if we can get another Whispering Stone and start working on Halcyon, that's a lot of pops that we can get friendly really quickly. Now this is going to spread the experience points out very, very liberally, but given that our heroes are now level 5, they've hit one of the critical breakpoints in terms of their value. They can make summons occur. So that's all you really need to get great value. Now we did take Fruitful Integration, so absorbing cities takes -2 turns. So now we can absorb the city and it'll only take 2 turns instead of 4. And given that that'll allow us to preserve the population and hopefully take Mage Glass Forest ASAP, I'm happier doing that than migrating them into our pop type. Sometimes you want to migrate them into your pops, sometimes you don't. And now we're just going to go around and clear out the guards they have left, just to get a little more experience points. But it also gets us more resources, because we are taking guarded territory, and that's all you need to get a nice little bonus out of the spawn point. But we've killed an enemy hero. That means that now we have the remains in our crypt. If we sell the remains, we'll get 100 gold, but we'll also get access to whatever equipment they had. Sometimes it's worth it to keep the hero around and try to resurrect them in a crypt. But I think we're going to be able to hire some good heroes in pretty short order once we have a new city. And, you know, we've picked up a chestplate, a vitality, and a crown. So I'm going to go ahead and give our ruler Giant's Bane. The ruler did start with Magecraft, and so Frost Orb is generally a little better there, but we can pick up some ways to use Magecraft later. And for now, Giant's Bane is a huge upgrade if we're fighting a large target. This is great if we have to fight a very powerful enemy. But now that we've completed Town Hall 2, we can actually build a foundation for our Wizard Tower. That's going to give us 5 Imperium income. And as I mentioned, we didn't build any Imperium into our original build for our faction. So getting that out early is very important. So we've unlocked our next tome. Where you put your tome is going to influence, of course, what sort of Imperium things you get access to, but the new tome is also going to give you access to any sort of hero abilities. If they come with a building, you'll have access to the building, a brand new selection of spells for you to research and use. And my recommendation is to try to find something that solves the problems that you're experiencing right now. Now, right now, our economy is not doing that badly. The biggest issue is mana, but by conquering the city and attaching the Mage Glass Forest to it, and then of course by picking up Forest of Reflection, we'll hopefully fix our mana in short order. But you can see here that the majority of where mana is going is towards unit upkeep. Unit upkeep is going to be something that we can modify pretty easily with Shadow Binding. That's a really, really nice ability. But here in the Rite of Astral Abundance, you can get 1,000 mana for 150 Imperium. Given that we're making pretty good progress on our knowledge, I think we can get 2 more Astral Tomes in quick succession, and then we can get access to these higher level things. And this Shadow Binding and the massive bonus we're going to get to our upkeep is only 8 turns away anyway. So we're going to take one of the Astral Tomes. The Astral Tome in this case that I think we're going to take is the Tome of Evocation. The Tome of Warding is amazingly powerful if you're fighting against a Mystic, because it's going to give you access to magical wards, which is a huge bonus to your elemental resistance, as well as Staves of Warding, which if you have enough support units, this is a colossal amount of bolstered resistance to be throwing around, especially if your support units are AoE. But we're fighting against a character who is not currently Mystic, and so Tome of Evocation gives us the same sort of nice bonuses that Astral does in terms of unlocking Imperium Tree, but the Tome of Evocation is also going to get us a Channeling Tower, which is another giant source of mana, and we really do want just as much mana as we can get, so we'll take the Tome of Evocation. Here I'm happy taking Lightning Blades. Lightning Blades is a unit enchantment, and therefore it's going to interact pretty favorably with all of our units. Some things like race transformations only affect units of a specific race. Enchantments, on the other hand, because they come with an upkeep cost, are constantly growing as your army grows. We're also going to pick up another Wild Speaker. They're pretty strong, and I really would like to get a quarry down and more draft going, but we needed Imperium. Alright, so we have successfully captured Saintspire. Now we have a second city, so that means our hero can actually be a governor. Our hero being a governor, specifically of the Shadow Affinity, plus 3 Shadow Affinity per turn. We're actually going to get to Shadow Binding even faster. So we kind of don't have the Imperium necessary to grow the city by clicking attract population, at least not right now. And unfortunately, whenever you take a city over from a free city, or it starts in balanced income instead of manual for its city automation, expansion focus, and it grabbed the wrong tile because it grew at the wrong time, that's not the end of the world. It's a little annoying, but we'll bounce back. And because we didn't pillage the crap out of Saintspire, it's immediately economically productive here. So Nidgard has grown a pop. That means we can put down a quarry. We'll bang out this blacksmith real fast, and possibly the mana obelisk as well. But in short order, we're going to want to put a channeling tower down. We'll probably want to put it here so that way it's adjacent to this outpost. That means that this outpost is probably living on borrowed time. We'll demolish it at some point, but it's been useful so far, just getting us extra mana. Alright, so if we sacrifice some hit points, we can get a lot of loyalty out of Relic immediately and reach Pact of Loyalty. I'm happy to do that, not the least of which because we're so far ahead of the other player in regards to relation here that we can actually withdraw the Whispering Stone, give it to Halcyon, that giant city we found under the earth, and start working on a relationship there. Obviously, we'll want to come back to Relic in the near to immediate future just to make them a full vassal, but in the meantime, it's pretty useful to get that little bonus. Now, I wouldn't hate having Frost Evoker. This is a very powerful ability. Same with Fire Evoker, but given that Sundering Curse is a special ability and we can use it on a cooldown of 1, we kind of have a lot of damage wrapped up, especially frost damage. So I'm going to go ahead and take Arcane Strength. It's just plus 10 damage, plus 10 accuracy. It's a very nice passive. So our ruler Faldorn is pretty badly damaged right now, but that's mostly because of that event that we took. But I'm going to go ahead and take Inspiring Leader here. I think that given the stack that she's going to be traveling around with, she's going to have a lot of potential mana upkeep cost that she can manage. Basically, the more mana you can get out of that ability, the better it is. I'm going to go ahead and click Attract Population in Saintspire, so that way we can go ahead and attach this Crystal Forest, because our mana economy really is kind of like bumping up on its ceiling. And that, although that did cost us a little Imperium, it leaves us with enough that we can click Astral Inspiration, and then next turn when we finish Call of the Wild, we'll get some nice little bonuses in terms of knowledge. So this tile here is the only tile that's immediately next to this Forest of Reflection. That means that we need to build an outpost here, so that way we can immediately start working this ancient wonder. But fortunately, if we take our hero here and just drive him straight forward, we can actually start building that outpost this turn. It costs us a little bit of experience points on some of the troops who can't keep up with him, but that's okay. Sometimes it's worth it to sacrifice a little bit of experience points, so that way you can move around the board faster. So here you can see Evoker has this little exclamation point on it. That means that the knowledge cost here is lower than normal thanks to our perk that we just picked up. And given that none of these other researches are absolutely critical right now, we do want to pick up Fulmination eventually, but it's not worth spending 20 extra knowledge on, which is what we get by just taking Evoker. Alright, so we have the Imperium necessary to go ahead and click Shadow Binding. This is going to save us some nice little mana, so that way we can keep growing our mana economy. We'll build arcane battlements here in Saintspire just for a little more defensive flexibility, and we'll summon another animal down here because Avernus has actually sent out a war party to attack us. Now fortunately it's not a very strong war party, a level 3 hero and 1 archer, so if we send a couple of beasts here and maybe rush out this wild speaker, we should be able to defeat it in short order. This is a consequence of having declared war on the AI. If you attack the free cities, be prepared for them to trickle troops towards you. At the moment, they're not going to be a real threat on low world threat, but on the higher difficulty levels, you do need to clear them out. Alright, so we've brought a lot of these units here who are at elite. If they die, that's really unfortunate, but if they don't, then this is a great opportunity for them to level up. Because we have enough astral here, we can actually make a knowledge check. You can sometimes use your affinities for specific magics to modify the ancient wonders. This is a 50-50 shot, but if we miss, then we only lose 1 astral affinity. It's not going to explode our economy, and if we succeed, great. And it saves us the hassle of having to spend 197 mana here, so let's roll it. Sometimes you get lucky. This is a dangerous battle because these are some tier 4 units and those are very strong, but fortunately they're mimics and they copy other units on the field. So if you bring lower level units, they're actually less terrifying than if you bring higher level units. Yeah, we lost one unit there, the Gortusk Piglet, but in exchange, the Hunter Spider is now a champion, and because we cleared this bronze thing, we're going to gain access to a Spirit Wolf for free. We could potentially take one of these other nice little bonuses, but a Spirit Wolf is a tier 3 unit that really powers up your military, and we just lost something, so I'm happy to replace it. But yeah, our Hunter Spider evolved, so now we have a Hunter Spider Matriarch on the field. It's turn 19, so that's a little late for our first Hunter Spider Matriarch, but we have so many that are about to come out of the gate. It's going to look pretty scary for Hambinger in just a second. And now our ruler has endurance training active because we're level 7. Endurance training is really a huge payoff. 15 hit points and 2 status resistance allows our ruler to command very powerful units to great efficacy and keep them alive for a long time. I think our mage is going to go ahead and pick up resistance 1. I think Fire Evoker is definitely worth considering here, but I think we want to get a little more resistance and survivability on our heroes. Generally speaking, you don't want to exclusively take abilities, or in PvP, when you end up in a fight, your heroes are a little soft, and then your opponents just hit them with damage spells and kill them. Oh great, so Lesser Storm Spirit got the bonus this time. That's another evolutionary ability, but it's one that'll evolve into something different. It'll evolve into a Storm Spirit, which does electrical damage, which means that we have a little more flexibility in terms of our combat arrangement if we get a couple of elementals on the books. And because we had so much research, we actually finished Storm Spirit in the same turn. So as our next tome here, we're going to go ahead and take the Tome of Glades. The Tome of Glades is going to give us access to Glade Runners, which is going to be a very powerful ranged unit once we have Tome of Amplification on the books, and that's going to be our next tome. But it's also going to get us Tome of the Entwined Protector, which is a shield unit, therefore can give us some defensive flexibility. But the big bonus here really is that it's going to just give us nature affinity, I think a little stronger than Tome of Fertility with what we're trying to do. We already picked up a pretty good support unit in the form of the Wild Speaker, and because we're already working with some tier 4 frontliners, I think picking up a strong ranged unit gives us some tactical flexibility as we move forward. Oh, and we found Glade Runner right away. Great. Alright, so as I mentioned, that AI did spawn an army to attack us, so we're going to go ahead and finish that Wild Speaker, and now let's just add a Storm Spirit to the mix and go clear these guys out before they get to pillage anything. The Storm Spirit was honestly overkill in terms of clearing that army, but now this stack of 5 can actually just start clearing stuff out in the back. We can take care of this brigand camp, get a little bit of resources, maybe clear out these pastures, get some food, clear this army of NPCs, get some more production. And that's something you want to be doing too. Like, you don't want to stick with just a couple of stacks. If you can get enough units on the board that you can start working in a lot of different areas, it will cost you potential access to experience down the line, but it's worth it because of the economic bonus. Ooh, alright, so we got a Rite of Autumn event, and this will allow us to sacrifice food to gain an Autumn Fairy unit. I'm 100% into that. Autumn Fairies are a tier 3 unit, but they're a very powerful battle mage unit, and we are going to have a lot of like frontline animal stuff, so having some powerful people behind them, it's a pretty good thing. Here we're going to take Fulmination instead of Aspect of Root. Aspect of Root does have a discount on its knowledge cost, but Fulmination is naturally just way cheaper because it's a lower level spell. We don't necessarily need Aspect of Root if we're not going to be using a lot of Entwined Protectors, then it kind of does nothing for us. Whereas Fulmination is a nice spell to have access to in combat if you're playing in PvP, and sometimes the AI cast spells, it's not particularly great at doing it consistently, but it does sometimes cast spells. So now Loxhole, unfortunately, has not built any walls, so they are not going to have the benefit of a siege. As soon as we can attack them, we can just attack them. So we're just going to move our army in. This is going to split the experience points between units that need to evolve and units that already have, but I'm okay doing that here because we do want to start getting our high tier units to higher levels because they'll carry levels extremely well. The stronger you can create 3 stacks, that's really your goal, but once you can get 3 strong stacks, you can kind of do whatever you want to. Now Loxhole here, we are going to go ahead and raise. We don't really need the city because we're going to be turning this into a city right now. And this way we'll get a massive influx of money that'll allow us to hire a new hero. Because we probably want to have 3 heroes, ideally 3 heroes of at least level 5 whenever we get to our big fight in just a couple of turns. And so getting all this money here should kickstart our economy there. We're going to go ahead and take Lightning Focus. It's only 13 knowledge to complete. So our war with Avernus has actually come to an end because they've become vassals of Hambinger. At this point, we can actually declare a justified war on Hambinger. So I think this is it. Whenever we get the influx of money from Loxel, we'll recruit a new hero and we will declare war. And now we're on to our next tier 2 tome, but we're going to go ahead and pick up Tome of Amplification here. Amplified Arrows is going to make our Glade Runners just really disgusting. They're going to do a lot of damage in terms of electrical. Now, if we were playing multiplayer, we might want to be careful, because if you are too heavily invested in exactly one damage type, it's easy for your opponent to counterplay you. But in this case, we're playing against the AI, and I do think that Amplified Arrows is the easiest way to get great value out of a Glade Runner, and we're working on those right now, so let's go ahead and lean into that. Alright, so we just got a quest from our hero to acquire this Arcanium ore, which we were going to be working on in just a moment anyway. And importantly, this quest is going to give us enough experience points to gain a level. And now we even have enough Imperium to found our final city, pick up the Forest of Reflection, and hopefully fix all of our mana problems for the remainder of this campaign. We could potentially wait, but I'm going to go ahead and hire this hero now because this hero has access to Experienced Leader, and I don't mind paying the tiny premium in terms of gold to start getting experience points down on our Glade Runners. Also pick up Precision Training on our Ruler. That way, if we have any Glade Runners, they'll have a meaningfully increased chance to hit, do a lot more damage. And we'll pick up Weaver on our Moloch, the powerful wizard we have. That's more of an ability that's useful in manual combat, but it's very, very strong to have there. And I think practicing the right way will make you better. And you would definitely want that in multiplayer. They're at the Ritual Circle. And now we can actually make an outpost here and pick up the Mana Siphoner and then go ahead and get another extra level with our hero. It's very doable to have level 10, but we were investing a lot of our experience points into our units, and that's gonna make the battle pretty easy for us. We just have a lot of tier 3 and tier 4 units now. And our third city is online, so we can go ahead and annex the Bronze Wonder. So that's going to explode our mana generation. Not to mention having another city growing is usually a useful thing. And we're going to go ahead and pre-cast a Lightning Torrent. This is going to make each turn like a little more annoying just to manage, but casting points are something that is limited. And if you have a whole bunch of extra mana, which we will have a whole bunch of extra mana in short order here, then you need to make great use out of your casting points whenever you've got them. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and just take a level up here. And what the heck, we'll take Spell Amplification. It's even more damage with our spells. We just got a tier 3 weapon though, so I'm going to go ahead and kit out our new hero with just a little bit more equipment. They could be potentially just a pure caster, but I don't see any particular reason for that because we are mostly like just leadership traits here on this character, and getting more brawling is usually good. We'll have our third stack here. As it marches up, just clear out these penguins for us. Alright, so that little quest for us is going to get us 330 gold. That is enormous, because that's going to represent a lot of potential Glade Runners or infrastructure, maybe a combination of both. But that's a really big economic bonus that we get for doing a quest we probably should have done earlier. And we can go ahead and get Tranquility Pool from our new friends in Halcyon. And we're going to reshuffle, and we found Amplified Arrows. That's what we were really looking for, because we want to get Amplified Arrows down on our Glade Runners before we get into this fight, but it's going to blow Hambinger apart. We're going to go ahead and build a Resonance Field here. By building these special province improvements like Channeling Tower and Resonance Field, we're just going to get access to even more and more mana, which is kind of the big constraint for us here, because whenever we attack, we're going to want to just send in a bunch of units, start pillaging things, you know, evil stuff. But we want to make sure that we also have enough mana that we can actually cast some of these spells like Amplified Arrows ASAP. And unfortunately, we didn't actually have the mana to start working on Astral Blood here, but it does take so long that it would have slowed down our ability to cast Amplified. Probably not worth it. So now we can cast Amplified Arrows. And we're also going to go down here and visit Province Encouraged because we built a Sacred Meadow. So now our troops are even more buff for this first line fight. We should be in pretty good shape. And now we have a gajillion Imperium Imperium, and we reached our Rite of Astral Abundance, so now we have 1,000 mana. That is exactly why we were pushing Astral, because I knew that at some point we were going to start running out of mana and need it to push out a couple of very powerful enchantments. What you build Astral into your build for. So we're going to go ahead and declare war on Hambinger here. They have managed to turn Avernus into a vassal, but because they've generated more grievances against us, we actually get justified war here. Now, Amplified Arrows is so powerful because it creates sort of a chain lightning effect on your ranged units, and it allows them to do AoE very, very quickly. It is a dangerous upgrade if you do not prepare against it, but fortunately there are ways to resist. But you do need to invest in elemental resistance if you're fighting somebody who's building a nation like this or a race like this. Otherwise, you can take a lot of damage very, very fast. We're going to move our units in and start a siege, but we're going to make sure that we add something here that takes this down to a 2-turn siege. In order for this to be a 2-turn siege, we do need +3, so we need Undermining the Walls or Construct Onagers, but money is a little thin right now, so I think Undermining the Walls is going to be fine. Now, our gold income is getting pretty spooky at the moment just because we do have all these expensive high-tier units, including a little defensive army that we've left down near our capital in case anyone's trying to attack down here. But we are going to be pillaging Delvile, and that'll get us just an awful lot of money pretty quickly. And that'll help offset whatever budget problems we're running up against. We're going to go ahead and click Astral Blood here. It gives you a big bonus to critical hit in the event that you cast spells in battle. You're not going to cast as many spells whenever you're auto-combating, but it still comes in handy. So we're going to go ahead and cast that pre-queued Lightning Torrent here, just to do a little damage to their first stack, and then we'll attack. As it turns out, we didn't even lose any units in that fight. Awesome. Now, this is such a huge city and it's so close to the front, we're just going to go ahead and click Vassalize on it. That will cost us a little bit in terms of potential gold, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. We're outside Flowing Fields. If we can just get there, then Blitzing Baddies Episode 1 can be done. All right, so it looks like they've got a pretty big stack out here near Saint Spire and our central outpost. Plenty of tier 3s walking around. We may need to bounce troops back and clear them out. Ooh, and we get Chain Lightning as our discounted spell here. That's pretty scary. You know, we've got 150 Imperium, and we can click Rite of the Guardian Spirit. That'll get us another Spirit Wolf. Ooh, and we found Hambinger himself. He's still only level 5 down here, so our heroes definitely could have just taken him and abandoned this outpost. That might not have been a bad idea, but I think we can clear this out so easily that there's no reason not to. We're up to our first tier 3 tome here. But I think it makes sense for us to go ahead and take Tome of Vigor. We've already invested a lot in terms of getting good value out of our animals. If we get Animal Handler, that would be really, really strong because it gives us mind control immunity. And in PvP, one of the things that people can do against you if you exclusively invest in summoned units is just take the Tome of Summoning. That allows you to mind control enemy summoned units. It's pretty busted. We'll throw in Leafskin as well. It's not as critical, but Leafskin does give you faster movement through forests, and there are a couple of forests between here and their capital, so if it shaves off a turn, then it's worth the mana, and we do have mana to throw at stuff. Ooh, Hambinger actually ambushed us out here on the west. This is something that I like to do in the game is if we end up with an unfavorable exchange, we won't re-roll it, but as it turns out, oh boy, Hambinger really bit off more than he could chew. We completely massacred his army, and now it looks like his capital is open, so this went from something where I thought we were going to clear that out and then come back and siege this down in 10 turns to Delvile is our vassal, and we're right here, and Hambinger just threw away his entire army. So let's go end this campaign. We're gonna pick up Natural Recovery here just so we can heal a little better over the next turn or two. But we're inside friendly territory now because we turned Delvile into a vassal. So we are gonna heal pretty darn quickly. And if you're here, you can even potentially watch the siege while healing. We'll clear out his raiders just with our extra stacks. Oh, but we're just short of being able to reach this other stack over here. If we'd queued a summon, then that would have been also very strong, because with a queued summon, we could just drop a new unit here, immediately attack this stack, wipe it out. But unfortunately, we didn't queue an extra animal, so we'll have to attack them next turn. Also go ahead and plop a Seed of Nature down. It's not strictly necessary, but it is useful. But whenever you're playing Age of Wonders 4, if you're trying to develop your own economy of units, then you want to make sure that you get into Town Hall 3 as soon as possible. And given that we haven't been pouring Imperium into our population growth, and we've been building things other than farms, Nidgard here is actually not going to hit size 3 before the end of this campaign. But because we did a summon heavy strategy, that's not important. But make sure that your economy makes sense based off of what your goals are for the campaign. If you need to get into your tier 3 units so that way you get access to mounted dark cavalry or whatever, then make sure you prioritize your food growth a little better. Ooh, so here we're getting an event where we can actually just pay 185 gold to get a knight unit. But if we're gonna besiege the capital this turn, then we actually probably need the gold so that way we can construct onagers. So we'll just go ahead and say, sure, whatever, we'll kill them. Let's start besieging this capital here. So it says 6 turns, but we'll just add some siege projects on. Construct onagers is going to do a lot of extra damage here. And because they basically have no units, we're going to go ahead and just click Headlong Assault. That's not advisable if you are attacking a city that has tons and tons of units in it, by the way. These jerks, they keep on running. And unfortunately, we're not able to keep up with them. But unfortunately for them, they are going to die in just a minute here. As soon as their tower falls, then the game will be over. We did manage to pick up Empowered Beasts. That's going to make the final battle out here near Flowing Fields a foregone conclusion. Yep, there's Empower Beast. Plus 20 damage, plus 10 hit points, gains Demolisher. Now, unfortunately, Hambinger is bringing an army into our capital, but it's too little too late. It's over for him. Ooh, but we caught this stack. So this guy can get in range here. These can move in here. And the Spirit Wolf can activate it. And now we've just cleared out Ham in the east. Hey, our troops are going to actually be able to make it to the capital right on time to intercept this stack. Except, oops. Sorry, Hambinger, things are over for you. Alright, there it is. Walls breached in Flowing Fields. We can click attack. Our units are beaten up a little bit, but at this point it's worth it to just auto-combat this. The Headlong Assault means we will take some extra damage, but hey, that's the price you pay. There it is. We won the battle, and that should be the end of the campaign. And there it is, Faldorn and the Shadow Druids are victorious. So let's see our journey. You can see right away in terms of our military rank, we were pretty close except for this big jump. This big jump is when our evolutionary units started coming online, and it really did give us the resources in terms of our military to do a lot of economic growth. The economy rating is definitely overranking the strength of Hambinger here just because the AI gets so many bonuses. But the military is going to determine how quickly you can actually clear stuff. And so just like push out your military. It'll make you very, very strong. But by here, turn 30, their army had collapsed. This was when we just wiped them out, and they tried to rebuild but did not have time. All right, that's our first episode of Blitzing Baddies here on We Play Games. I'm Walker. Take care.